Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kirsten Martzi, and I'm the Manager of Education and Community Engagement Programs at the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. And I'm so pleased you're here with us tonight for this puppet making demonstration with artist B. Lynch. This event is presented in connection with B. Lynch's exhibit, Pull Back the Curtain, which is on view at the museum until February 13th. And I highly encourage you to come see the show if you can. B. Lynch's work spans multiple media, including printmaking and puppet making and video, and the glue that holds it all together is her time-bending, fantastical world of the reds and the grays, exploring income inequality through these storylines that are hinted at but never fully explained, and explored through these recurring characters and vignettes that you see in the different media that she employs. We did an artist talk with her earlier in the run of the show, where she talked more about the ideas behind her work and behind this exhibit. And tonight's event is going to be more focused on the process, how she creates these puppets and these little dioramas that bring the world of the reds and the grays to life. So the plan is that she will speak for around 40 minutes or so and show some video of her techniques and her puppet making process. And then we'll have a question and answer session with all of you. So if you're here via Zoom, you can use the Q&A button or the chat function at the bottom of your screen. And if you're with us on Facebook, you can use the chat function there, and we'll keep an eye on that too. So you're welcome to ask questions at any time, but we'll save time at the end of the program to answer them. This program is presented for free, like many of our programs, and if you enjoyed it and you feel inclined, we would really appreciate a donation. And you can do that at brattleboromuseum.org/support, and giving at any level is meaningful for us, and we really appreciate anything that you're able to do to support our programming. So thank you in advance if you're able to donate. And I think with that, I'd like to bring B. Lynch on screen. B. Lynch has exhibited around the Northeast and even internationally, and her work has been shown in Germany. She's a teacher as well and was awarded a teaching award for her work at Simmons University in Boston. And she's a Boston resident of JP or Jamaica Plain. And we're so glad that she has shared her work with us. This exhibit has also showed most recently at the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester. And we're excited to see what happens next with the world of the reds and the grays. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, B. Thank you so much for being here. It's good to see you.
Well, it's great to see you, Kirsten, and thank you for inviting me to do this talk. And thanks to the Brattleboro Museum, which has been a delight to work with. And I have to do a shout out to Sarah Freeman and Mara Williams and everybody at the museum for all their help and assistance and good humor as I've been working with you all. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody, I am so pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you about how I make my objects. And what we're seeing here is one of the dioramas that is at the Brattleboro Museum of the Carpenter. And this figure is 10 inches tall. And in fact, I'm going to walk you through, here's another one of the figures at Brattleboro. I'm going to walk you through how I make these small figurines and some of the other things that I work with in my studio, which you see right here, full of stuff. And I will be explaining things as we go along, but I think we'll take a moment to see my working space and then to start out with how I begin any project, which is with a drawing. I make a concept drawing of the figurine. Sometimes it takes several drawings to get to where I want to go. But then once I've arranged what I want to do, I use that as a reference throughout the project. So here's my first take of the cobbler and his environs. And these will be referenced a few times more during the piece. Now, I use a template because all these figures are 10 inches tall. Now, I've got about 30 of them now, and the drawing on the right, you can see, is like a stick drawing, and that allows me to take this aluminum sculpture wire that is pretty manipulable with one's fingers, though later as I twist it, I will be using needle nose pliers. So this stick drawing is actually what I use to move the wire around the figure and get the proportions correct. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So here I'm twisting it. As I said, it's pretty easy. And you see one of my many needle nose pliers to the side there. And when I get to where I feel like it's the size that I want, I cut off the excess and then give a twist to the wire so that it's tightly joined together. Now, when I make the hands, I don't make the hands like all the fingers and everything at this stage. I am creating more like a little mitten area so that I can have a place to fill out what I need when I make the hands more detailed. And so once again, I take the wire and I trace it around. This aluminum sculpture armature wire, as you can see, I get it in the industrial size, but you can get it in a smaller size if you decide you want to try something like this. But I want to emphasize, this is just my process. You can make figurines in many different ways. And my figurines that are not, they're bendy now, and I can arrange them in any kind of way because I have this wire underpinning, but eventually they become fixed in place so they don't continue to bend throughout their life on the stage of the reds and the grays. So I'm twisting and I'm holding a second plier because it's much easier often to grip it with one plier as I twist tightly. Now, once I start connecting the parts of the body together, I use very fine wire. This is 28 gauge steel wire. It's more or less like thread, and it makes it very easy for me to wrap around and get a nice tight bond between the parts of the figure. So I work on crisscrossing the figure with the wire so it won't be moving around later on when I'm working with it. And it's interesting about wire. 28 gauge sounds like it's big, but it's really a very thin wire. Something like 16 or 19 gauge wire is much thicker and much harder to work with. And it seems counterintuitive, but that's the way it is, that the larger the number, the thinner the wire. So here I'm working away at getting this put together, and then I'll twist it to get it tightly to itself. And then as I cut off what I don't need, I will then move to attaching the legs to the body. And then as we see here, one of the last steps, which I always have to remind myself not to forget, is to put this little loop at the top of the head. This is very essential in my process because for the installations, I use that loop to hang the small figures from the ceiling or whatever way I'm showing them. And in videos, they allow me also to suspend the figure when I work with it. So it's kind of the business end. And I make it kind of long because there's going to be the whole head and the hair, but it's an essential part of my process. So the next part of the way I make my particular figurines is to make the body. So if the armature is kind of the skeleton, then I need the parts of the body filled out. And I do this by crumpling up tracing paper. And then as you see to the left, I have a lot of masking tape all laid out. So it's easy for me to pull it off and use it with one hand. So I don't have to keep stopping. And then I'm fastening part of the head onto the wire armature. And I'm just being pretty sloppy about this because it's really not essential at this point that I be particular. So this part of the figurine goes rather quickly. There's nothing to wait to dry. I'm not doing anything picky. So I can move along fairly quickly, which is nice because later on things slow down considerably. Now here I'm wrapping the paper around the neck. And this is essential because everybody needs a neck. Your head does not sit on your shoulders, so you want to be sure you have a neck. And using the masking tape there. And then I'm going to be starting to apply the features to the face and know where they're going to go. So I'm drawing this on as a guide to myself. And then I take, oh my word, look at that. I'm gouging out that eyeball. Oh, there I do it again. Oh, but you want to think about, the fact that your own eyeball is set in a socket. And I'm trying to make this recapitulate a anatomy. So I do want to have the innies and the outies. The nose sticks out, the eyeballs go in. And as I add more paper, I roughly crumple it so that it is not flattened out. It has some loft to it because as I work with it, I'm trying to make like the muscles, the arms, the legs. I don't want everything all flat and like you think of paper as flat. I want it to have bulk. So here I am twisting this crumpled paper around and adding more masking tape. And as I twist it around, it has much more bulk in that way. And I've already got the other arm twisted on, and I'm moving down to get to the hand section. And more masking tape, of course. And now I've got his upper body. And I'll be starting to work with the rest of him in a little brief time. As I say, you don't have to be too picky at this point because everything's going to be covered over. So you can see that it's fairly rough. And there we can see the face. It has the innies and the outies, but he's got a terrible bandages all over him. Now I'm starting to think about the leg. Now this character, the cobbler, is a peg leg. He has a peg leg, rather. And so he's got one good leg and foot, but then I have to figure out how to construct the support for his leg that is not complete. And so I'm thinking about that. And there's a picture that I've drawn with the idea of what I think I might want it to look like. And there we see that the end of the leg has ends in a curl to suggest the peg leg rather than a foot. I've put the mask. Okay, now I'm going to stiffen up the figure. See, I've bent the arms to where I want them to be, and the hands are covered. And this part of the process is going to sort of solidify where the figure is. It's going to stay like this, and it's going to gain strength instead of being just this bendy little wire and sort of loose paper or masking tape. It's going to begin to have integrity as a piece. And I use acrylic modeling paste to do this stiffening. It dries fast. And so I can proceed relatively quickly. When I'm putting this modeling paste on the figure, I can't touch all of it at once. It's hanging from a rig I have in the studio from the hook that I showed you earlier. But as I begin to put the modeling paste all over it, I have to leave some time. So I have to go away for a few hours or maybe to the next day till I can so I can handle it. So here we see that the figure is covered rather roughly with the modeling paste. And I choose acrylic because it's strong, but also all the next steps use acrylic products. So everything bonds together rather nicely. And what I'm going to do next is start to smooth the figure and begin to put the real sculptural details. So up to now, it's like a very loose figure in the sense that nothing is very smooth or figured out completely, but the paper mache, I'm going to use the tracing paper again and the heavy gel gloss medium, which as you can see is pretty thick. And as I use that to be the paper mache substrate. So I put some in my container and then I use a small egg beater after I add some water and homogenize it up. So, one thing, a spray bottle is so handy in my studio, at least, because I need to sometimes moisten things up, but I don't want to pour water out. So here I'm homogenizing the acrylic gel and you can see what it looks like. And now it's time to start cutting up the paper strips that I'm going to be using. And just like with the masking tape, I like to have a lot of this ready to go so I don't have to stop in the middle of this sticky process and recut up more paper. So I cut it up, I gang cut it up, as you can see. And I get smaller and smaller pieces of the paper as I get more and more detailed with the figure. So the paper is slightly moistened with the spray bottle. It's more agreeable to work with that way. I stick it in the vat of the acrylic gel medium slurry, and I put the slurry on both sides of the paper. And then I sort of squeeze out the excess. It's a very sticky, messy process. So I usually have a sponge right next to me so that I can sponge my own hands off upon occasion when I feel all stuck up. And then I start to apply the paper on top of the figure. Now, this is a process that takes a while. It takes a while to work around the entire figure, and the smaller paper is used for the more detailed areas like the face and the hands. And this begins to slow down the process of making these figures. The process now entails maybe having to wait until all this is dry and I can put it new on it and be able to handle the figure without inadvertently pulling off some of the paper mache. So from a very quick rapid start with the beginning of the figurine, it's now going to be a fairly long and somewhat tedious process to be sure that everything is covered. But the closer I get towards the end, the more exciting it gets because the details of the figure begin to come alive. So here we see the figure is mostly finished. And you can see that I have an eyeball and an eyelid and lips and hair, and the ears. I showed a slide of that, but we went by too quick, so I want to mention it. The acrylic gel is really fantastic because you don't need to clamp it for it to have a very good bond. However, gravity is your friend. So when I was putting on the ear, I had to lay the figure down on the side and put the ear on and then wait until it was completely dry before I could turn them over on the other side and do the other ear. You can't do both at once or you're going to have one ear falling off as soon as you turn it over. So there is that sense that it's great. The acrylic gel pretty much sticks anything to anything, but you have to allow for gravity to have its way so that it can dry and then be manipulated. You can see I've got his hair on. And then the next thing that happens is the painting. So I've decided I'm happy with the sculpting details, and I'm going to put on some gesso. And gesso is an underpainting priming. It's acrylic again. It's white. And so I paint everything with that. And then after I do that, because this is the reds and the grays, and my cobbler is a gray, I make up some gray paint in nice fluid form. And I once again paint the entire figure except for, as you can see, the bottom of the peg leg, his eyeballs, and his teeth. Everything else gets covered with the gray paint. So as I paint him, once again, I have to wait for things to dry so that I can handle the figure. I paint it usually twice with the gray. So now he had 3 coats of paint on him, plus all that acrylic gel, plus the modeling paste. So he's pretty rigid and strong at this point. And he now has a personality. I begin to fall in love with my little character. He looks back at me and I become fond of him and start to envision him as an actor in my world of the reds and the grays. So next I have to figure out, how does this artificial leg, the peg leg, get attached? Well, looking at a few variations, I noticed that it has to flare out. And so I'm using aluminum sculptor's screening to create that flare, cover it with paper, and then I will eventually add more paper around the bottom of it to have a more even, it doesn't taper so much as what you see here, but it goes down more or less from the same going down. After having worked on the peg leg, it's time to dress my character. And all my characters have paper clothes. And for the reds, certain papers are used. And for the grays, certain papers are used. So I have a portfolio of that I choose out. And for the grays, because their costumes are essentially the same, they all wear the same clothes, unlike the reds who have all these fabulous outfits. I have templates. So once again, I don't need to rethink how to make the clothing. And here I have it laid out on the gray clothing. This is the pants. And this will be cut up in 3 pieces when I have it cut out of the larger. You see we have the pant legs that are getting constructed, and I'm using white glue. All along I've been doing the acrylic, but with the clothing, I like the white glue because it's water soluble and I can soften it with a sponge and it will be able to be corrected if I make a mistake. I also use a hair dryer and a roller to make the seams. Hair dryer is fantastic because it helps dry everything really quickly so I can proceed with the clothes rather on the fast side rather than having to wait for everything to dry. And you can see I'm starting to do the rest of the pants. And there it is. It's finished. It has its belt, his fly, his shorter pants leg is inserted into the peg leg, and he's ready to have the rest of his clothing put together. And I also made this strap and contraption to think about how would the leg be attached to the real leg. Now, this is a template of the sleeve. The sleeves are put on separately. They're not attached to the jacket. And once again, I use the roller to quick fasten the seams. There's the jacket template. And I'm fitting the various parts of the jacket and the sleeves. The sleeves will be glued onto the figure itself. And the jacket at this part has the opening is slit and the side panels are on. And once I get the sleeves glued on, then I can start fitting the jacket and then creating the place where the buttons will be put on for the closure of the jacket. And there we see the collar All the grays get the same kind of color on their piece. And now I'm making the buttons. This is what the buttons look like before they become buttons. There they are. They're put on the figurine. And we see the last part of his outfit. And that's the cook pot. All the gray men wear a cook pot on their head. It's a kind of hard hat. And it's also, they have available at all times something to eat out of or cook in. And I use the aluminum sculpture screen to create this. And then I cover it with aluminum foil and then paint it. So we see all the details. And then I want to make the shop. So I make a full-scale drawing to make the display cabinet, make that out of cardboard. I also make a workbench using a template that I draw and trace on tracing paper and use carbon paper to transfer it to the cardboard and then cut that out. And then those toothpicks are the way I hold it together. And the rubber bands are just there while the acrylic gel sets, because I folded up the sides to create the shape of the workbench. Now for the legs, I roll a bamboo stick around the screening and then insert them in the workbench. I make a drawer, and the aluminum screening acts as the box for the drawer. You see there's lots of tools, and I'm going to be making all of those. There's also some shoes and boots that I want to make. So here we see a couple of versions of the workbench that drawer actually pulls and pushes. And there we see all the various tools on the workbench. So he's all set to go to work. And the last that he works on, the shoe last. And here we see him in the cobbler shop. And he has some wares. And he, in fact, has a customer that he is trying to persuade to buy a pair of his shoes. And that's Vanita, one of my favorite red characters. She seems more interested in her mirror as usual. And where she comes from is the Red Palace, where she has plenty of servants, including my server, who has the drinks tray. She also has an attendant who sits in the background, and she has an entertainer. So the puppet master is putting on a show for Vanita and Dandy. And I became really excited by the puppet master and the puppet stage and decided that I needed to make one that was full scale. So I, in fact, did create this and made the little 1.5 inch tall puppets we see on the left, Lily with her pail and Digger with his shovel. I made them 18 inches tall so that they could actually fit on my hands. And I made an 8-foot tall. Here we see the two, Lily and Digger. More of a close-up of them. They're made much like the way I make the other figurines, except that their head is hollow. I use the aluminum screening so my fingers can fit up into the head so they can move around. And there's another one of the large figures. And there we see my 8-foot tall stage that I can go into and manipulate the characters. And who's in the stage are my horseman and my wolfman, the two magic figures in the reds and the grays. And on the left, we see the smaller version of the stage. One of the things I like to do is when I get excited about something, I make it in several versions and scales and thinking about it in new ways. And when I'm working with video, I use this wonderful thing called the green screen. And with the magic of a video filter, I can put any kind of background that I like in, replacing that green with whatever I would like. So here we see the fishermen and Specs, and they're maybe getting ready to eat. They both have their pots ready to go. And the green screen is removed, and this is a video still. And all of a sudden they seem to be sitting in a brick courtyard. So it's really exciting. And that's one of the things I enjoy doing with the video is playing around with the kind of backgrounds I envision the reds and grays being in, and then placing the figurines within it, and also some other characters as well. So here's that same server, but she's put in a more three-dimensional looking palace room. And there's the writer that we saw at the very beginning of the talk, and that is on view at the museum. But he's outside now, outside of his palace. So these are actual video stills. And then the horseman, or the vizier, one of the magic characters, is flying down into the palace courtyard in his balloon. And we see a more detailed view of these two characters. And my interest in them grew so much that I decided I needed to make large scale ones. Can you see this? A theme developing here that I could, in live action, become either the horseman or the wolfman. So I decided to make a large scale mask, and this is the template for that mask. So I can see if the idea worked. And it's a double mask. My head goes between, and I wear a black transparent cloth so I can see what I'm doing. And basically the character has to be seen more from the side. It just works better. But this gave me the scale in relationship to the body that I wanted. And then I could make that much larger and create the wolfman and the horseman masks. And you can see them there. And here we see the small figurines, the 10-inch figurines, battling. There's the mask figures, me impersonating. And then through the magic of video, you see me as the horseman on the left, and then one of the 10-inch figurines and a castle, all in the same frame, because in video, you can change up the scale, make something big or small, and have it work, which is one of the exciting things about it. There's another view of me with the Wolfman's book. He always has his book. I'm going to close here with a view of my studio. You see, I have lots of little things and playful things to amuse myself in the studio. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to see how I worked. And I thank you for the studio visit with me. And we'll take some questions.
That was great. Thank you so much, Bridget. That was so nice to see, to look into your studio and see more of your process and see the cobbler come to life over time.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you making that video, because I know, you could tell watching it, and I know we've talked about how there's a lot of time in between the different stages. So it was nice to see it kind of sped up like that through the magic of television.
Yes, it's just like a cooking show. You
Yes.
have to have everything in various states of donitude before you present it on camera.
Exactly. Yeah. But that was really a great snapshot of the whole process. We already have a question for those of you who are on Zoom. Again, you can use the Q&A function or the chat. And for folks on Facebook, you can use the chat function there, and we'll get to your questions. So we have a couple questions here. Someone asks, what are the names of the pastes, the types of paste that you used?
Paste, like
Yeah.
PASTE?
Yes.
It's okay. It's all acrylic materials. So it's acrylic modeling paste, and that's thick and heavy and is white and kind of crispy. The acrylic gel medium is gluey kind of, and that's the part I use to dip the paper mache into and then apply. And then acrylic paint, which I mix up to the consistency that goes on pretty easily. So it's somewhat thinnish because I need to get into all the different cracks and stuff like that. But I do, like I said, a couple of coats, and then I paint the details.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was neat watching it kind of smooth out as the more you worked, and having it be sped up and seeing it kind of get more refined as it went along. We have another question. They asked if you have a YouTube channel.
I do, but it's so ancient. It's really better to go to my website, which I have at the end. It's www.blynch.art.com, but that has videos on there. So if you want to see some videos, that's a great way to do so, or go to the museum, because I've got 3 already there.
Great. Yeah. And this talk will also be recorded. Our first artist talk was recorded and is on YouTube and is available at our website. And this one will also be recorded and will be on YouTube for anyone wondering. Kate says, thank you. They are adorable. I missed what kind of paper you used for the clothes.
Okay. I use, I really love all these fancy papers. I make books. And so when I go to the store and buy these fancy papers, I go kind of out of my mind a little bit, but I made a decision. This project, The Reds and the Grays, started out in 2012. So I've been working at it for a long time. And fortunately, having made a decision of the kind of papers that I would use, I bought up a lot of it so that I knew I was going to be making many characters. So I would always have enough. And I get this at Blick or Utrecht. They both carry, they're owned by Blick, but they carry their bookmaking papers. The large sheet, which is maybe 30 by 24 or something, is maybe $5 or $6. So it's not really cheap, but these figures are small, so I can use one sheet for several figures. I don't remember the names of the actual paper, but you go and you look at all their display and you can choose whatever works for you. And using the white glue, like I said, allows, if you make a mistake, if you're making the paper close, to undo it.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I really liked with the papers, they have such great movement and they feel like clothes. Like when you look at them, and they add such like liveliness and character to the figures. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, one of the things, and I didn't mention it when I was talking, but I always take the paper and I crumple it all up before I actually attach it to the figure, because that gives it that lived-in look. And the paper is agreeable. I use that word all the time about something that isn't fighting me, because a lot of things do fight me, but the paper is agreeable. So
Nice. That's great. These are great questions. Let's see. We have one from Dan who asks, I am thinking about creating puppet heads to attach to sticks and then a cloth to disguise the stick and the puppeteer's hands. How would you attach the stick?
well, it would depend on whether you thought you would be putting any part of your own hand in there, but you could create like a shoulder, which you would want anyway, right? For the clothes to drape. And that could be wooden, and you could drill a hole and stick a stick through that and either glue it or screw it in. I mean, without having something in front of me, I can't tell you exactly, but having shoulders and something that's wooden would allow you to have that stick. And the stick could go right up into the head of the puppet, so that you would have a little bit of, so it wouldn't flop off of the shoulders, right? Just like, and you could even have a little spacer and create that neck that I was talking about. Everybody needs a neck. It's going to look more real if you have a neck. So those are some of the things you might think about.
That's great. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about adding the shoulders and the neck and having the stick act as the neck. That's a great tip. Dan, let us know if that was what you're looking for. Another question here, are this type of puppets strong enough to attach a string to control their movements?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but they're not like a marionette. So they don't move. Once they're set into their pose, that's their pose. And I can change their angle that they're viewed at. And that makes a difference in a video. But yes, in the videos, I often have a string or wire that sometimes it's from a stick that I can move the figures over across the scene, or I have, which I find these days often gives me more control, I have a green stick with a little hook of a wire that can stick into that, and that stick allows a little less, the thing isn't going to move around so much.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like they might be thinking of a different type of puppet, because they ask, how can you move the joints? And it sounds like you don't move the joints on these
No, puppets. That's a marionette style puppet, and you need to create enough strings. There's usually 8 or 10 strings, and all you need elbows and knees and things to do that. And I've never done that type of performing object.
Yeah, there's a whole world of puppets out there. So this is just
I mean, I've seen some wonderful puppetry shows where it was a piece of cloth. And you got totally engaged the way this piece of cloth, you're so in love with it by the end of the show. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
It really has to do with the way the puppeteer presents it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dan let us know that was a very helpful answer. So thanks for that.
Oh, good.
Another question from Daniel, who asks, do you have any particular references or influences from the art and puppetry world?
Yes. Well, one thing that was a very recent influence was I got to take a couple of week intensive in at the Sandglass Theater in Putney, Vermont this summer, and got to meet all the crew there. And that was exciting to work with them for a little bit and learn their process. But to begin at the very beginning, I studied as an undergraduate in Japan and became enthralled with the traditional theater form with puppets called bunraku. And in that situation, these puppets are about 2/3 life size, so they're fairly large, and they're moved by 3 people. And much like this piece of cloth, you don't even notice the 3 puppeteers. You are so invested with these puppets, and because they are manipulated by all these 3 people, they have a lot of the capability of movement. I also like trying to think. When you get asked questions, you know what you want to say in your mind. But there's a Czech puppeteer, Jan Svankmajer. Svankmajer, that's it. Svankmajer, who makes he makes puppets, but he makes movies with performing objects. So he had a big influence on the way I work with figures and performing objects. And I'm sorry, I mangled his name, but he's really fabulous. And his movies are well worth a watch if you like the weird. They're not very ordinary, but I like the weird, so I love them.
That's great. I was wondering, watching you talk about your work and with the studio visit, all of these performing objects that you use and the masks and everything. I was wondering if you've thought about live theater with any of these or some kind of a production or performance.
I thought about it some, but and it was really fun this summer to work with Sandglass because they made you do that. Yeah. And I enjoyed it a lot, and I had some terrific people to work with. But my process in general is kind of a slow one. And I sort of mentioned that when I make things. I'm not sure I could pull it together to do a performance in real time. That's why I like video, because I can be as slow as I want, and I can perform either through my objects or myself in front of the camera. In graduate school, I did do at Mass Art, I worked with a movement artist there, and I did do a project that was very interesting for me to try, and also pointed out to me that maybe that's not my fort. I don't know. I mean, it's a few years have gone by and I've done a few more things. So I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but at this point, it's less interesting than the way I'm working with the performing objects.
Yeah, I think the videos are really interesting. Like you said, you can kind of cast your characters anywhere that you like, and it really opens up your options. Are you working on a new video now?
Yes. In fact, I've finished one in the last few weeks called Not Impossible. And it's a new way of thinking about the reds and grays. And now that one's kind of hopeful a little bit. And then I'm working on one now that is really Sturm and Drang. It's a oh, the chaos, I mean, things are not going well. And that I kind of stepped back from that a little bit because I was trying to complete this project, but I'm hoping I've been creating a soundtrack that is full of explosions and awful things happening, and I'm all excited to apply it. So
nice. Oh, that's great. I'm excited to see these the yin and yang of the hopeful video and the distress.
yes.
Yeah, I think so. Those are all the questions that we've had. I wonder if you have any advice for someone who's interested in getting started with performative objects or puppets. If you have any tips for how to get started.
A rich imagination is a good start. So, being interested in perhaps telling a story, but taking on a different persona. A mask is fabulous for that. Masks both reveal something and they hide something. So you can hide behind the mask or hide the emotion that you want the mask to convey in a certain sense because it is a mask. But you can also allow the mask to be much more forward or take on a role that you never would in your own self. And that's why masks have been so important throughout the world, often through religious ceremonies. The god will actually inhabit the mask. It's not the person behind the mask who's doing the performance. It's the god talking to everyone. A mask will also allow you to change your scale, like the mask I made for the Wolfman or the Horseman. You can be much bigger. Think of Bread and Puppet, which I also love, and also a Vermont tradition, and I've gone several times to their work. The scale of those puppets, or often the heads they wear, are quite large compared to the size of the body. So it allows you to manipulate the expression that you want to reveal or conceal. I don't know. I think masks are a great way into beginning. And if you like making little figures, there's lots of ways you can make them. You don't have to make them just like I showed you. I don't know. That would be a good start, I think.
That's great. Thank you so much. I love the idea of starting with masks. I think that's really accessible. Thank you, Bea, and thank you for everyone who joined us tonight. This has been such a fun and playful experience to think about these performative objects with you all. A reminder that Bea Lynch's exhibit is up until February 13th at the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. We're open 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. Wednesday through Sunday, 10 to 4, Wednesday to Sunday. And admission is pay as you wish. So it's all by donation. And similar to this talk, if you're able to donate, we'd really appreciate your support. You can do that at brattleboromuseum.org/support. And you can also find a recording of this video there in a couple days, as well as the recording of Bea Lynch's artist talk. If you missed that, there's a YouTube video of it up on our site as well. So I think that's it, but thank you all so much. And Bea, thank you again. It was so lovely being with you
it's
here
always
tonight.
Great to talk with you. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my work.
Of course. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Hope to see you at the museum.
Okay. Bye-bye.